I'm going to take you through developing REST API. I'll explain from what is HTTP all the way to how you can scale your API. So I think it's okay to get started. So I'm going to use Laravel for this demonstration. Okay, so let me just disable notification 1.7. So Laravel is a PHP framework that is famous for making PHP development easy. But we're not going to focus much on Laravel or PHP, but API design and how you can make your API modern or build a good design around API development. So straight to our project. I just scaffolded a new Laravel project to help me demonstrate what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to compose and install to install any pending packages. I'm going to use Visual Studio Code for this whole presentation. So this is VS Code, and I'm going to create a database now, just to set up our project. So there's what is called an environment. So environment simply shows your application environment configuration. So I'm using MySQL DB. So I'm just going to add my password here. Don't worry, you won't be able to steal my machine and use my password by any means. So and I usually use a default database called Laravel for all my demonstration, but for the sake of this one, I think I'm going to create a new database. So to create a new database, I'll just do very quick and so we're going to create a database, and we're going to call API demo. Database API. Oh yeah, the spelling. Sorry for that one. I was spelling. And that's it. So we're just going to exit, go back to our env. So if you go back to our env, we can simply change our database to API demo, and we're good to go. So we'll close that one and run migration. So I have a alias for almost everything that I frequently use in my machine. So ATF just means artisan. It's artisan migrate fresh seed. So that's what I'm going to use. That is going to migrate our database, just to confirm that our connection to the database work. So to show that we have the database set up, I'll just show you that one in a bit. So everything set up in our environment, we don't need to do any configuration here from this environment setup. So I'm using Beekeeper for database management. So I think it's a little bit slow, but once it's put up, I'm going to show the database so we can check what's going on. I'm going to use Insomnia for API test. And what we're going to do today is we're going to start first of all authorization. and explain the process of authorization and how it works. We're not going to go into deep and use any package. And after that one, we're also going to explain how how it how you send requests to the server. So so before we go to that one, I'm just going to explain some few things about HTTP. So HTTP is a hypertext transfer protocol. I can't remember when it was released, but it's a client server protocol that helps in communication between the server and the client. Yeah, so that's pretty much. So I'm going to try and explain what usually happens when you send a request through API, and or through the process of sending a request through the sending a request via API and getting the response. So basically, when you send a request when you send a request via API, it is being sent from a client, and a client can be a bot, it can be a web, it can be a mobile application. That is what we call a client, and it sends it to the server. Now the server will give a response depending on that the request you've made, and that response the request and response always include things like text, video, etc. Can name it. So most of my drawing I'll use Miro to show the drawings of things that I need to explain very well. Just written some few notes, so I'll just go through them. Now the client send a request, so I'll just quickly just quickly I'll show this is our client here. Okay, and this can be our HTTP or layer there. Then we have our server there. So this is the more or less the way things work. So this can be then then this can be our server. So when you send a request, oh, it's refreshing, but just give it a minute. I'll just use always have a tool for almost everything. Always have a tool for almost everything. I think that was going to slow down, and I only have 40 minutes to explain this whole thing. So console, click new diagram. So we have a client, and we can say this is a client here. Then we have the nini now. We have the server now. So we can say this guy here, the server basically. So this client, I'll just zoom, and we have the server. So let me just zoom so that you can see. So we have the client and the server, and there's a relationship between these two guys. The client send a request, and the server send an answer or a response. So that's how usually it works. So through the HTTP from HTTP1 and HTTP2, the process or the way it interacts is more or less the same. Yeah, so when the client send the request, and the in between a lot of things happen, and that is where we have now, if you did computer science, we have things like the network layer or communication layer usually happen. So HTTP uses a TCP protocol to communicate between the client and the server, and in between it just acts as like a protocol. So between the client and server, we have the proxies, which acts as the gateway. So in between the proxies are things like it can perform activities like validation, request redirect. They can redirect the request etc, or you can even cache the request. And also in the proxies, you've add things like load balancing. So load balancing is happen in that layer. You can use a web server like Nginx to achieve all those items. Then something that I need to elaborate is between HTTP and HTTPS, because I'm going to bring that one in the discussion. So HTTPS is just an extension of HTTP, but HTTPS work in the SSL layer, that is security layer of the network layers, as opposed to HTTP. So the difference, mostly if you've been using email, is HTTP works in TCP layer, but now HTTPS works in TLS layer. That is transport layer security. Okay. And another major difference is HTTPS is encrypted. The data is encrypted because it's all about security. But HTTP, the data is not encrypted. That's why if you go to most system, you will have the padlock. I think I can just show that one. So if you look at this one, we have this padlock here. That means there's a secure connection. That the connection between the client and the server is very secure. Yeah. Then using HTTP, there's a validation in the server that say this communication is secure. The information I'm receiving from this client is secure before even transacting or returning the resource to the client. That's pretty much. But you can go and read more about how HTTP works. It's a very interesting journey from the client to the server and back to the client. So I'll advise you to go read more about how HTTP or HTTPS work. So on the left side, you can see some of the few stuff I was trying to do some other time, and I think I borrowed this one from this old diagram. So I use this one to experiment or explain stuff. Fair enough. So before we proceed, there's some other things also we can talk about and think in their zone. So we call them status code. So status code basically okay, this song. So clearly something different. So status code basically means that giving back response, and those response you need to give them the server response code. So these codes are used for by the client side to interpret the kind of error or information they're going to consume. So for instance, any code 200 is okay, or rather a success, like everything went well. If it was an update, it was done. If it was a post request, it was done successfully. And that's sorry. And that most of the time, if even for instance, if you look on the outside, we'll have the HTTP method. So this HTTP method perform different functionality. Okay. So there's a message. Let me just check the message before we proceed. Okay. Full screen on platform. Okay. So I don't know if you're not able to see my screen, but let me just try. I think I'll be able to zoom my screen. Okay, so let me, okay, fn plus plus, yeah, I think can do that, yeah. So what I was saying is we have different statuses before uh, with the Python. Okay, I just increased the font. Did increase the font, so maybe I can increase it further. Yeah, that's fair enough. So I'll just use Insomnia to explain almost everything. And let me increase it further. I think that's more than. So we have the statuses that the status code that you get with every response from the server. So it can be 200. We have 200 etc. We have 300. 300 basically means that whatever you're looking for is not available. It changed permanently. Then we have the 4141, I think means unauthorized. 44, whatever you're looking for is not found. 43 is I think forbidden. 500, there's something wrong with the server. Now, I think you can go and read more about all these status code, and mostly if if you're building client application that consume APIs, yeah. So, then we have the HTTP methods. So HTTP methods are the major one are post and get. Okay. But over time, due to demands, we added put, patch, delete, and option and header. So I'm not going to focus on the methods. I'm sure you can read more about them. The post, the patch, and the delete options. Yeah. So basically, get means like, hey, I need a resource, and when I'm talking about a resource, uh, uh, through this presentation, every time I mention a resource, that it simply means that whatever you're getting from the server as a response is a resource. So if you're getting a list of users, you're getting a user's resource. So if you're getting a list of employees, that means a resource. Okay. So that is what I mean by resource. So yeah, I think I've explained more enough on HTTP. And finally, before we jump into code, I want to emphasize on my thoughts on GraphQL, because I think I noted that one down too. Now, we have REST, okay, and we have GraphQL, and I think the GraphQL is a new kind of API design or tech that is coming up. So both of them have different advantages, but I'll talk on the disadvantage of GraphQL as a backend developer, not as a frontend. In frontend, there's a lot of what do we call it? A lot of benefits. So when I tried experimenting with GraphQL, this is something I realized that if your application is going to grow, if your application is going to grow and you're going to keep building the GraphQL schemas, at some point you're going to get, if it's going to be a huge application, you're going to have a huge technical debt on processing or querying the information. If you have a big data set, it's going to be a little problem. There's a way of achieving it's achieving the speed seamlessly, but I've not tried that one out. But that is one big thing that you need to be aware of as a backend developer building application with maybe huge data set on GraphQL. On REST, there's no big difference. The power of GraphQL is it gives you the power to design your API as a front-end developer. So you don't have to go read documentation or rely on the back-end developer to get information from the API. So you can design, if you want users plus their tokens, you can get user and the token. But if you only want the user minus the token, you can also, you know, get the users minus the token. So yeah, so let's jump to code. Okay, so this is Insomnia. So we're going to quickly make a API endpoint, and I'll also explain my coding kind of styles when going through this system. So I'm not going to use the auth. I'll just explain how auth works. I'm not going to go. The point of this step through is not authorization, but it's just how to structure your API. So number one thing is try as much as possible to keep your API endpoints self-explanatory. Like someone can really understand what you're doing or how they're going to consume your API. So for instance, if I want to get let me say I want to get all users or all cities in a country. Okay, so we have cities, so your resource URL will be cities. Okay, and I'm not going. Okay, let me just make the controller. I'll just call it a demo controller. So I think I blocked notification. Why am I getting notification? Jesus. Okay, anyway. So let me make controller, and like I say, you will see a lot of aliases. I'm using aliases in my command, so I'll try as much as possible explain them before I use them. So packmat is just to generate a controller, pipet and make controller. So I'll just do that one and say API demo controller. What am I doing? Controller. So I'm just going to create a fresh controller with no any other any function or method. Okay, there's an error there. Okay, yeah, because I left this one hanging. We'll just save it and go back to our terminal. If you're wondering, the terminal I'm using it's a new one. I think I'm not using the default terminal, but it's this one just popped from the top, so it's make work easy. I don't have to switch back and forth between the through applications. So so if you try that one more time, so generated the computer successfully. So if you go to, if you can search, that is Control P to search API demo. I'll have shortcut, so boom, and we're in. So there's a plugin that will always flag any file that is important, and I'm not using it in my file. So that's why the is modified. So we're just going to create a method, and we're going to call this one get cities. So when you're writing a method, whichever language you're using, when you're writing a method, try to minimize on code, commenting your code, and let your code be, explain themselves. You don't need to write comments to explain your code. So like for instance, instead of writing cities, you can write get cities, and from this one you're just going to return a response. Okay, to return a response and JSON. So we're going to return cities in Kenya, and that I'll explain that one. Okay, then you can say cities. I explain why I included the data key before returning this API. So cities, and you can say Nairobi. Sorry, it's Nairobi. Okay, then you can say Mombasa, and Kericho. I don't know if Kericho is a city, but no, let's just ride along. So for anyone who's not doing PHP, what this function is doing is like, hey, we have a function called get cities, and we're going to return a response to you called cities. Okay, response for cities basically, but in JSON, because our API will configure API to only accept JSON. So that's pretty much, and we're going to say to add HTTP what status code. So we're going to say this is 200, which means everything is okay. Okay. Then save that one and go back to the API endpoint. Create the API endpoint, and we just say what was that? That was API demo controller. So I love calling my APIs using array, because it makes it easy for me when I'm using IDEs. So that's why it's different. Normally, what you'll do, you do something like in Laravel. You'll do something like this in Laravel, but just love calling my controllers and classes using this kind of style, the array one, because it makes it easy. If I want to go to this, just make it easy for me. I know there's other ways, but yeah, everyone have there are so many ways of killing a cat, I guess, or a rat. I don't know the phrase, but let's just proceed. So if we go back to our API testing our application, which in this case I'm using Insomnia, and before that, let me just serve this application valid. Oh, that's also another command, another lesson I'm using. I'm using valid to serve my Laravel application, so you can check it's valid, Linux valid. So VL just means valid link, so it just link my application. So if I go to my browser, I can do something like this, and it will serve my application very quick without any problem. So I'll just go back to Insomnia and paste the link and API. So this is where I start explaining about the how to design your APIs. So when you're creating API endpoints, okay, I think they're gonna pronounce the nouns. So when you, for example, when you're querying for cities, okay, make your resource to be kind of, I'll just say self-explanatory. So if you're querying for cities, just say cities, for instance, okay? So you're getting cities. So this endpoint is going to tell you anything to do with cities, okay? So if you send that request, let's just hope for the best. So we can get the cities, okay? So we've not explicit the content type for this application is JSON, but we also want to say that we're only going to accept JSON and nothing. We're not going to accept any response if it's not JSON. So if you send, the only response you're going to get is a response. So Laravel has a way of converting data to JSON if your request is JSON type. Now we have the headers, and this is something you can learn more about when you read deep into HTTP. So we have the server. It will tell you the server type. So in my machine, I'm using in Nginx 1.8. Then the content type is application JSON. There's so all this information. You can add as many headers as possible, and I'm going to show you one of them, how to send a request plus send a request and include headers or with that request. Then we have the cookies. There's no cookies here. Then we have the timeline, just explaining more of what really happened. Now, I do want to explain something here. So I mentioned that we have HTTP, and there are different versions of oh, it's like Satatu. Need to end up. Move fast. Oh no, not really. 30 minutes. So we have different versions of HTTP. So it's started from HTTP 1, HTTP 1.1. I think right now we are at HTTP 2. The difference is when there's a communication between the client and the server, before sending the request, there's a connection that need to happen between the client and the server, and it's usually a TCP connection, if I'm not wrong. So there's a TCP connection that needs to happen between the client and the server. And now the TCP connection just confirmed that the client can communicate with the server. Now, from HTTP1, I think it was, how can I say, it was not parallel. If you're sending a request, there's one TCP connection that was being created. So if you're sending like 2 requests, that means you're going to have like 2 TCP connections. Then pipeline or parallel TCP connection was introduced in HTTP 1.1. So that simply means you can create parallel or pair TCP communication or whatever, like with as many requests as you want. Then HTTP2 introduced the multiplexer. That means within one request, within one TCP connection, a lot. I don't know, I'm not sure about this, but let me just explain. Within one HTTP TCP connection, it can send multiple requests, if I'm not wrong, but you can read and confirm. So within one HTTP request, the TCP connection, you can send many requests. Yeah, if I'm not wrong. So basically, this explains that hey, our HTTP method is get, which is this one. Our URL is this one, okay, and our version, HTTP version, is 1.2. So this cut across HTTP 1.1, 1 and 2, okay. Then it will show you the host. The host is where you're hosting, or the domain of your application. Then the client now, which is also referred as the user agent. I'm using Insomnia. So Insomnia will say, hey, the client's name is XYZ. Then the content type, okay. Remember I said that resources or request or response can be images, etc. So the content type that we're accepting here is we're going to accept JSON. If you go back here, you can accept. You can make your request to go in different format. You can send even a binary file. I think that's pretty much. So let's go back to our response, which is this one. Now, if we narrow down to data now, this response, how do you structure your response? We have a client, and when you're structuring the response, I'll just explain how I do restructure my response. When you're structuring a response, you have to make, I usually make them as generic as possible, and I borrowed that one from, I think it's called JSON org. I think it's the standard way, JSON API org. if I'm not wrong, something like that. JSON API org. So I was struggling. Yeah, I think this one pretty much. I did that research last week. So when you're returning your data to a client, somebody developing a client application or a front end, you need to make the API as generic as possible. And what I mean by generic as possible is, if I'm going to have users, don't give me you. For example, for instance, let me just write this one down. For instance, if I'm going to have a response, don't give me users. Okay, then you start giving me, let me see, then you start giving me the users now. Try to make this one as generic as possible by just saying, no, we're going to have the first that, hey, this first object of the response contain data, and the data is users or a user. Okay, so try and make that one as generic as possible. So we'll come back to that one. Then your API should have, like I said, it should be self-explanatory. What I mean by self-explanatory is, at some point you don't have to write documentation to explain your API, and that one can be is well attributed in this screen. Okay, for example, I want to, I'm returning a response to users, but I also want to tell you that, hey, if you want to get people, or if you want to get teachers, you can use this information to get users, and that is what is being explained in this part here. So when you're returning users, and you want to explain that these users you can get teachers, you can include that one in your API response. So that make it very easy for the front-end developer to consume a good to simply just consume API, and also is able to read from the API. Now, I think this one was introduced to respond to how easy GraphQL is able to give the front-end developers easy time to generate whatever they want. So that's how REST API respond to that one. So yes, try and make your API as generic as possible. So if you have data, just have the data object with all the data. And if you have links now, just include the links. Then I'm just going to demonstrate that one. Now let's go back to our API. We're going to do a modification. Now I named this one auth, and I will not use it. I'm going to explain the header. Now header is, how can I explain header in the API? Now in a request, header is like, it's just explain, let me just say, the terms of communication between the client and the server. It's an agreement between these guys, like, hey, we're going to send this guy, we don't want to include it in the body, and his main purpose is to do XYZ. For example, in Laravel, okay, how can we do authorization very quick? Okay, okay, there's a chat. Let me just have a look at the chat. No sound. I'm sure everyone can hear me. If you can't hear me, I think respond. I think everyone can hear me, if I'm not wrong. If I'm not wrong, everyone can hear me. Now, simply we have bearer. Then you can say usually something like this. Okay, so we can send a request to the header, and the header is just telling the, hey, we have this agreement. Can we transact? Okay, so it also means you can add, I don't know if there's a way of just, kind of not having notification. And we'll figure that one out next time. So it's like I was explaining, the other is just having terms and the condition of transacting between the client and the API. Now let's go go to our API and build something very quick. So I'm going to add cities. I'm going to add a resource cities. Now I'm going to, for those guys who develop with Laravel, I'm going to explain how you can structure your API very easy, and to make it kind of self-explanatory. So let's jump into the terminal, and we're going to create a model, and this model we're going to call it city. So also something, when you're creating a database, just if you're not using Laravel and you always create your database should be in plural. Here. So we're going to create cities. Let's just create a controller for it, that one, and what else? And that's pretty much everything that we need for this step through. So pretty much I think we're done there. So okay. So we're going to add your cities. We're going to replace this one with an city controller, and there we go. Okay. Laravel usually kind of use index, okay, but I don't prefer using index. Just be explicit, man. Just call it cities or something. So if you go to this one, you can simply come here and say, let me just go to the file itself, and you can easily say get cities, and return cities. Now this time I'm going to create a resource. Okay, I'm going to create a resource, and to create a resource in Laravel is very easy. So we're going to add. Now like I said, I use a lot of aliases. So add simply means p-artisan. So I'll just say add make. I'm going to make a resource. There we go. Always, or if you're wondering how my terminal is doing the autocomplete, I use the Z- for Z- terminal, so you can also check that one out. I'll put the link in the chat. So we're going to have city resource. Okay, and this is just going to create a resource for the city. So let's just close that one and straight go to city resource very quick. Now this is simply return a JSON resource, so you don't have to write response JSON and stuff. So you can just return it. And there's a resource, and there's a collection. Okay, so collection simply means a collective. Like if I'm going to return all users, that is a collection. If I'm going to return a single user, that is a single resource. Okay, so we're going to create our cities table first, and what we're going to do here is just give it a name. Okay. Oh, by the way, if you have a question, you can just put it in the chat, and I will be notified. So just going to have a name, not going to do anything fancy for this one. And very quickly, let me just generate a factory for it. So how do we create a factory? So like say I use a lot of aliases, so my factory is something like this. So just use that one, and just to save time, I'm going to say city, and let's jump straight to create city factory. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add the city model. Autocomplete is a little bit slow, and that. Okay, so simply it's going to save us a lot of time, trust you me guys. So we're going to just do faker simply means like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but take the wheel, just give me the names, just need the names, kind of stuff. So we're going to say city, so just going to give us any city in the world and return it. So that's pretty much and red means like I'm not using. I've imported something that I'm not using, so I always just, it's a waste kind of. So let's go to what do you call it? Seed. So Seeder or DB Seeder. So if you go to DB Seeder, you just call. You just write this on once and you forget about it. So factory, you're going to generate cities, and the class, how many you want to generate, 20 of them, because that is going to help us explain a lot. So create, okay, that pretty much save it. So let's do a test run if that is working. ATF meaning PHP artisan migrate, like I said, this is what I said. So ATF simply means PHP artisan migrate. CL means clear. So very good. So if we check our database, so let's go through our database. I use Beekeeper for database, and it's a new tool, new shiny tool I'm using. So we'll just connect very quick to our database and check using API demo, and you have cities here. So if tukikuja hapa, these are the cities that you have. Now it's very sad that PHP Faker does not, or kind of generate African countries. I'm not happy with that. So we might do something maybe in the future to generate African countries. So we are generating 20 records. Okay, so we're going to use them to explain how to write API. So very quickly going to go to our controller. So city controller, okay, city controller, there you are. So we're going to actually love to generate actions. So actions help you like perform a certain action, but how are we going to do this one? So since we're going to only use one controller for the entire demonstration, we just say generate resource. Yeah, I think that's generate resource. Like, hey, we're going to give you this guy and do whatever you want with it, but as long as you give us the resource back. So it's going to give us data, and maybe so we're going to say that we have HTTP status, okay, and we can always make it 200 if you don't pass anything. So what we're going to do, we're going to say if whatever we're getting, if the data that we're getting, okay, I think I need to hurry up. Is an instance autocomplete, right? Instead of collection, or is an instance of, need to hurry up. Don't worry guys, you're about to finish. Instance of length, and hope that was the one. Hopefully I'm not wrong, that you can see import class. So which one? Contract length, definition right. Okay. So yeah, pretty much. So we're going to say like, hey, if return, and we're going to return the resource. So we're going to say city resource collection. Yeah, so we're going to return a collection. Natamani tuifanye bana. No, I hate live coding. Totally hate live coding. So we're going to receive this one. If not the case, just going to return a single one, and we're going to pass the data. Whatever. We're going to pass the data. Yeah. Things collection, and collection peer will give the collection data. That's pretty much. Okay. So let's see how. So if you come here and say return return generate uh, uh, to complete this way. I don't have VS Code. We can say, so let's we're going to return all cities. So we're going to say cities. Then there's a shortcut of getting all cities. So guys, let's see what we're going to get, and this is going to give us some errors because we're not calling it directly. So that's pretty much, so we don't have the screen, the red. So if you see a lot of reds in my code, I'm using how do you call it? I don't know. I'm using. I just remember. So let's see. We're getting null. That means yep. Why are we getting null? I know why we're getting null. Is because we didn't tell the resource what to give us. So you need to tell the resource like, hey man, if you're going to return anything, please return for us cities, okay, and for us cities, and it's supposed to be okay. Let's say something like this, name. We only want name, and you say like this name, okay. So if you're going to return anything, please just give us the name. So I think that should work. So we have cities and name. Now I want you to have a look at something. So I added cities here. That's going to bring cities. Now you should not, with Laravel, I'll just try as much as possible explain how Laravel is trying to use this kind of what do I call it, kind of specification to generate their APIs. So they are trying to be as generic as possible. That means by automatically they will add the data wrapper for you. So there's a way you can remove it if you don't want the data wrapper, but I think I usually just leave it there because, like I said, your URL or API endpoint should be as descriptive, as self-explanatory as possible. So the front-end developer knows I'm going to query cities. There's no need of saying cities here. Okay, the best version maybe is like data. Then you say like data. Then you say cities. Okay, something like this, but you really don't need this, okay, when your endpoint is as specific as possible, like self-explanatory as possible. So let's fix that error. So what you're going to do, we're just going to delete this and delete that one, and we're going to return now the data, which is we're getting cities, and it is data, and this is the data, the name of the cities. Okay, now maybe you might ask a question like, sasa nikienda kwa users, for example, let me say you're going to get users. Yes, it's going to be users, but you're going to get the same response like this one. Okay, now this will save you time when this will make your API as good as possible. Now if you're going to get, let's get got to complete and take time. We're going to get a single city. Okay, so we can return so what this function does is just check that, hey, the data I'm receiving, is it a collection or a paginated collection? If it is a paginated or a collection, I'm going to return a collection. So that's why we're returning here. But this one, if it's a single data, we're just going to return a single data. So that is what we're going to do now. and okay, we're going to generate resource. Okay, generate resource, and what we're going to return here is we're going to return city. Then we're going to say city find or fail. You should always use find or fail. That means if it fails, it's going to throw an error most of the time. So it's going to get the first ID. Okay, hopefully this is going to work. I hope so. I'm not sure. So okay, so we're going to get city. But now back to like I said, your URL need to be explanatory as possible. So if you're going to get a city, so here in a file work that city ID, for example. Okay, that means, and maybe if you want to show, you can say city single show. So it just make your API as self-explanatory as possible. So you don't have to write APIs that don't make sense, like writing we have city and you say city here, then we have the ID. So just make it cities, but now we're going to get a single city. You can even use single here. Okay, it's just like kuandika Kiingereza, just write English with your APIs. Okay, so we can just say you just say cities. Okay, and the city ID. Usually I don't like adding the whatever explanation in front of it. I just say city ID. And when you're writing the docs, when you're using API docs generator, it will understand what you mean. Okay, so here we're just going to get a city, and I think that's pretty much. So let's go to our API. Now I'll change this one to oh sorry, change this one to cities. Okay, then on you can use Control D to duplicate your respondent. Now we have cities here, so we're going to get cities, and this one we're going to say cities. Okay, /1. So if you try to get that one, let's see what's going to happen. That means we're only going to get one city. Now remember, we still generic, but we're returning data. Okay, now let me explain what I meant by making your application as self-explanatory as possible. So if we go back to cities controller, and here we're getting all the cities. Now let's paginate. Okay, paginate. Okay, pagi. Yeah, that's the spelling maybe. So if you go back to our cities, and these are cities, sorry. So if you go back to cities, and now let me just move this one to this side. Now you can see our API it explains everything. Like we are the current page. What I meant by explaining everything to the developer in the API. So we are the current page. We are querying from ID 1. We're only getting last page is 10. The paths that we're using per page, how many we are querying, then the total to Kunayo 20, then we get all these pages. So even if I take this one to get the last page, okay, let me just, I've never done this before by the way, I'm just trying if it what I'm explaining is true. So we can say it's usually /4. So okay, so if let's see if that's going to work. And yeah, it's working. So to prove that it's working, let's go back to our, I left this on deliberately. Let's go back to our resource, which is I think going to be my last point. Okay, and we're going to return the ID, of the citizen. So as you can see, the ID is 19 and 20. That means we're querying the last page here. So that's how easy it is to make your application so the developer don't need to communicate with you every now and then. Okay, now lastly, Lastly is exposing your API resources and data. Number one, always on production use HTTPS. I explain what HTTPS is. Now always try as much as possible and use HTTPS in production. Number two, don't expose your resources. That means your database schema should be different with what you're giving to the public. So to explain that one in code is, if this one is ID, or if this one is name, okay, in the database you wrote name, okay, but when you're giving it to the front-end developer, when you're giving to somebody who's consuming your API, your schema, the IDs, the table fields that you use in the database should not be the same as the name that you're exposing to the front-end developer. I hope that is clear now. So instead of calling that one name, call it city underscore name. Okay, just call it city underscore name. So if somebody by any chance is trying to hack your application through maybe SQL injection and the stuff, they will never know how the data is being saved in your database. So your resources, the name IDs when exposing the resources should be different from what you have in the database. Okay, and that also takes me to my second point. Okay, when you giving your when you're giving the application ID, I think I'm 10 minutes late, so I need to hurry up. So when you're giving the application ID, okay, the ID should not be the same as the ID in the database. Okay, so this one is written ID, but what you expose to the public should be something like this. Okay, like you can generate those files. I don't know if I can get that one very quick to finalize my point is hashing IDs. So I think you should not expose the ID. If ID is one, don't expose ID as one in okay. I think add that package. There's a package. Maybe I'll just do this one and share with people. Okay. So I hope you get the point. The point is, please don't. Oh, I think this one, if I'm not wrong. Let's just give this one a try very quick. If it doesn't work, no, we'll just move on. Like, yeah, something like this. I think I usually use this one in my application. So what we'll simply do is I'll try and copy this one. Hope it's going to be very fine. And while that one is installing, let's just go straight and implement it very quick. So it's going to saying like encode this one. So we're going to encode that one and see if that is going to work. Encode ID self-uber. So let's just try that one and see how good that one is going to help us. We're going to encode it and see. Hopefully that is going to work. I don't need to keep you guys there. So let's check with our guy if it's done. So kidogo tu. Then I'm not going to explain the decoding process. You can go check that package how it works. Sorry. So that's pretty much. I think that was the last point. Then we're good to go. I didn't explain authentication and stuff. I think you can read. The whole point is building scalable APIs, and I'm going to iterate on all the discussion that all the points that I've mentioned throughout the discussion or throughout the presentation. So let's give it another try. I think yeah, finish. Just give it a little more time. Then I'll show you how you present your data. Now, if you want to know how to decode this one, I think the notes are in there. You can check how to decode this one. Yeah, without an issue, you can check how to decode as a function constructor. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, think you can check out to Discord this one. Well, I think the point is just to show you how it's okay. Is it taking a lot of time? Man. So then Rakisha Bala. Okay. Is there anything else? Oh, API versioning. Another issue I have with the GraphQL is now API versioning. Now, trying to do API versioning in Laravel is as easy as this one. You can just say, hey, you know what? We're going to we're going to we're going to group this one to a simple API, and we're going to call this one version 1. Any REST application, it's easy to version. Now, when it's you're building schemas in GraphQL, so I tried checking out it's being versioned, and the reason why it's difficult to version is because the query points, the endpoints depend with the front end developer, so it's very hard to version your APIs. But I think the best thing you can do is not to update your code base, version your code base, not the API now, which is depending from whichever angle it's very easy to check. So I think thumbs up. Let me just see that one then. Man. Let me recap as we wait for that one too. So number one, I explained about what is HTTP and HTTP protocol and how it works. It works through from the client to the server and getting the response. Then I mentioned of designing your API to be self-explanatory, and I think explained that when you're designing your API from the API endpoint to the API data, try to make it as self-explanatory as possible. Then I mentioned that your API should be generic, kind of, should not make it so tight for the front-end developer. That means, for example, if you're returning data, you should just return data whether it's a collection or a single resource like this one. And also mention that your API response body or also still searching on self-explanatory should have all the information required by the person developing the front end application or the client application that is going to consume your API. Headers is just for communication. So if you want to make communication on, mostly it's an agreement kind of with the client and the server, between the client and the server. Yeah. Proxies help you to do the middle work between the client and the server. So that was explanation also is in the HTTP explanation that I gave. And finally, I think I mentioned that try as much as possible, or sorry, try as much as possible to make your API explicit. So I think I think we're done. So I'll just stamp that one very quick, then we call it a day. So let me just publish this one. Okay, then explain Laravel and narrative. Okay, government spectrum chip. Yep. Think number 9. So published, and we'll say. So let's see. Kifanya kazi. Run good. Oh, okay. This is not system, so import class. What do you mean the class is not found? Maybe. Yeah, so let's see. So hopefully it's going to work. Yeah, there's an error, and I don't think I have time to debug that error right now. So that's it. If you have a question, please just post the question, and I think in 2 minutes I'll stop recording. So if you have a question, please just post the question in the chat, then we call it a night. Yeah. So sorry again if I was jumping between almost everything. I was supposed to do something different from our initial discussion with Emmanuel, but I thought it was wise enough to share what I learned last week on APIs with you guys. So now I was jumping between everything else. So you can post your questions, and if you guys don't have questions, I think we can call it tonight and meet next week on Thursday.
Thank you guys. I think yeah. So next Thursday, we'll give you posted on the next session. So thank you.